Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am in the Suisun Valley at Tolenas Winery with owner and winemaker Lisa Howard. Lisa, welcome, and tell us about Tolenas and the Suisun Valley. Where are we?
Right? Where are we? You pulled off I-80 on a highway that you've driven a million times between Sacramento and San Francisco, and are right in the middle. And you thought, how is there wine country that I've never visited right here, right? Everybody sees the Jelly Belly factory and the Budweiser factory and just cruises on by. So we are just southeast of Napa. We are in Solano County. We share a bordering county to Napa. So we're actually one of the oldest AVAs in California. Wow. Our AVA started in 1982. We are a group of farmers really here. And most of the winemakers here are still farming for other wineries and just making wine.
Other wineries in Napa.
And other wines, that's right. Yes, so we're their little hidden secret of what they like to blend in. Can we say that? And Tolenas is one of those little farming families. So my parents, Steve and Linda Tenbrink, are first generation farmers. They moved here from the Bay Area. It was a dream of my dad's to always be a farmer. And so he started farming fruits and vegetables, and they owned a fruit stand and eventually evolved into the wine business and the wine grape growing. And Tolenas was born much later. That's my husband and I's label, out of necessity to want to be in parallel with my parents, but not take over that Tenbrink name that they so, built up on their own.
So they're not making wine under the Tenbrink label?
They are, actually. It's just very underground and small production. They don't do wine tasting per se. Here and there by appointment. You kind of have to know about them and request their wine, and they will absolutely get it to you.
But they really let you buy the fruit and do it. So yes. I'm curious, are you working exclusively with estate fruit, or are you sourcing from anywhere else?
So we do try our best to use estate fruit. So most of our fruit comes from fruit that my dad and my brother grow. The Pinot Noir is right here at the winery, and then some of the other varieties are in the warmer part of the Suisun Valley. But we do have to source a couple things outside of my parents because they don't have those varieties that I want to work with planted yet.
So do tell me what varieties you have planted, and what are those varieties you wish that you have to buy?
Yes. Okay. So we have the Pinot Noir, and we make our white Pinot Noir from that. And then the Petit Syrah and Zinfandel, we all get estate. The Sauvignon Blanc we don't have planted yet, but we get from my dad's absolute best friend, and it's still only 5 miles away. So in a way, it seems like it's still estate, right? And that's really it. The Tempranillo comes from my dad that we blend into the red blend. That's it. So we just buy one variety outside of...
Fair enough.
Yes.
Okay, I find that an interesting thing that keeps popping in my head that maybe listeners are going, Pinot Noir, you're near Napa, and you make Pinot, and you're making Petit Syrah and Pinot. So I'll have you talk about that in a little bit, but I'm curious, what's your total acreage of your estate that you're working from, and how many cases are you producing?
Okay, great question. So the estate that the winery's on is just a 5-acre parcel with 4 acres of planted Pinot Noir. It's split between 3 clones. It's a really neat little vineyard. And then my husband and I have 55 acres in the most upper part of the valley, which is right on the Napa Valley border. And that's where the Petit Syrah and Zinfandel are grown. But definitely not all of that comes into the winery. We still sell quite a bit of that because we're only at about 1,400 cases.
Oh, very small producer. And where are your wines available? Are they available direct to consumer? Are you in markets across the U.S.?
Yes. So we sell, I would say 99% direct to consumer, right? We have a few local restaurants and bottle shops here in Solano County that carry our wine, but that's it. You have to be right here and get it from us. And of course, our website. We ship nationwide.
So you said your dad had a dream of farming, and he bought this property when you were a kid. And so you grew up around this. And I'm wondering, what is your first memory relevant to wine?
It's a great question. So my mom's full-blooded Italian. My dad's half Italian, half German. So wine was an everyday part of our life, right? You eat food. Food was everything in our house, and then wine just goes with that. But I have to be honest. I was not really into wine until after college. I'd always loved, food and wine together, but I didn't really get that bug until much later. I actually swore I would not be in the ag industry, not be in the wine industry. I quote unquote ran away from the farm and studied engineering at Cal Poly and swore I would get a stable job with a retirement plan and PTO, all the things farming is not. And
here you are today.
Here I am back doing everything I swore I wouldn't.
So, wine was on your table as a child and all that time, but you said, okay, it wasn't something that you wanted to do, and it wasn't something you really enjoyed. So, obviously, you changed your mind.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, is there a particular wine, or I'm sure there are a few, but a wine that stands out as one of those aha moments? And what was that aha moment?
Wow, that is a very hard question. I mean, I guess... tongue in cheek, I'm kind of, I'm a daddy's girl, right? My dad and I are pals, and his Petite Sirah is very special. And knowing that I watched him, plant the vines and grow them, and the struggles that they went through of times when they had to cut fruit on the ground, when everyone ignored Suisun Valley, but watching him bring that fruit in, watching him care for how he made it, even before I was really into wine, but and being able to taste a wine that your dad has made, it's an aha moment for me, because when I drink that wine, I taste so much more than just wine, And so I think for me, that will always be my most favorite wine.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. His Petite Sirah.
Yeah.
The Tenbrink.
The Tenbrink Petite Sirah. It is a very special wine. And of course, for me, it's extra special.
Lovely. So, if we were to come into your home and go into your wine cellar, what kind of wines would we find in there? Do you have mostly your own, your friends, from other countries? What would we find? Oh, what do you like to drink?
Yes, I wish we had a bigger selection. I have a very small wine fridge because my husband always says we have an entire barrel room and cellar room. We don't need a wine fridge in our house. But we are Suisun Valley diehards. We really, our wine fridge, you're going to see a lot of Suisun Valley wines. Our friends, we trade wine, and we really support this local industry. Of course, we're going to have a few Napas in there, maybe some champagnes, high-end wines. But, really when it comes down to it, I would say you're going to find mostly Suisun Valley wines in our cellar.
Mm-hmm. And did you and your husband open anything recently that drank really well?
Well, yes, and actually this goes against everything I just said. We just recently went on a trip to Paso, and it was for our anniversary, and we had the pleasure of going to La Aventura, and we were able to try his blend. I'm not sure which vintage it was now. It might have been 15 or 16, the blend he made for his wife, the one for her. And I will be honest, that wine actually brought me to tears. I love that wine. I love the story. And then plus I was on my anniversary trip with my husband. I mean, my gosh, right? Like I'm on cloud nine regardless of what I'm drinking. So it was...
Context is everything.
Yes.
So tell me something. Do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Oh, gosh. I mean, my gut reaction is no. Mostly because I feel like every variety tells a story. Every variety has a place. And that'd be like saying, is there a perfect person? No, I feel like every variety sings its own song and has its own thing that it brings to the table. And I think that we need to appreciate them all.
Well said. I like that. I've heard people say no and I've heard people say yes, but never just own personalities. I love it.
Thank you.
And what's your opinion on wine critics and scores?
As a winemaker and wine owner, I think we all, even amongst wine critics and winemakers each other, have a love-hate relationship, right? We want those great scores and we're like, come on, please. But then we know that we're always striving for that fountain of youth, right? So when we're making wine, we have to know and remind ourselves that not every year is perfect. Not every situation is perfect. And so we can't beat ourselves up. When I was very, very first making wine, which really wasn't that long ago, I thought that was everything, that I had to make this perfect wine. And then I realized that there's a reason why perfect wines, or when I say perfect, really good wines are special. Mm-hmm. It's because all the stars have to align. The weather has to be great. The picking decisions have to be perfect. What happened in the cellar, the aging, the storing, everything, right? And if you think you're gonna do that with every single wine, every single year, you will go bananas. So I respect my fullest heart, people that can taste 1 million wines in a day and give them scores. I mean, wow, that's a talent I don't have, certainly. But yes, we're always hoping for good scores, but it's something I have to be careful to wish for.
So as a wine drinker, red, white, or rosé?
Oh gosh, all of them. I mean, how can I pick? I'll be honest, I probably drink more white than people think I would drink. I love a good red, of course, but
well, especially Suisun Valley is a very red heavy region.
Certainly, yeah, heavy reds and some aromatic whites are definitely coming to life, that's for sure. But I love a crisp, refreshing white wine. And when you are working in the winery a lot and barrel tasting reds and things, sometimes it's just a nice break to taste a dry white wine. So you'll probably see white wine in my glass more than red, but gosh, I love them all.
Still or sparkling?
I love sparkling, but more frequently still wine. Yes.
And how do you approach pairing wine with food? Are you a big fan of pairing wine with food? And do you have any tips that you would share with someone else of how to approach it? I mean, do you pick the wine first and then cook up your meal, or pick the meal and then the wine? And then what are you looking for when you do that?
Okay, so growing up in a household where this sort of came naturally, I didn't realize till later in life that this was a struggle that people had, right? That they didn't know how to pair wines. And respectfully, I think it's because you have to dissect that wine first. Is it sweet? Is it acidic? Is it full-bodied? Is it, milder, smoother? So I'm always thinking about, even as a winemaker, my food and my meal first. That's probably that Italian blood in me. So I'm like, okay, this is what we're having for dinner. What goes well with that? Unless, of course, we're doing it at the winery where we're trying to showcase our wines, I guess I would do it in the reverse, right? But in home, and I'm assuming a person that's, not a winemaker, you're gonna have a meal that you're planning for your company or your house or your dinner, and then you're like, what wine can I go with it? So I always think of those drier, acidic white wines or those bright wines. Think of it in your head as that nice, fresh squeeze of lemon on top of your dish. Imagine your wine being that. So, your Sauvignon Blancs, your Assyrticos, your Chenin, that nice refreshness on your pasta or your chicken. And then the steaks and the meats, it's like, what sauce or seasoning would you normally put on it? Zinfandels can be jammy and a little bit on the sweet side. That's like your barbecue sauce. How would you put that with your ribs or your pulled pork? And then the more, a little bit tannic, maybe a tiny bit acidic reds. Think of that as your vinegar or your dry rub that you put on meat. So I don't know. That's the way I think about it.
Really good descriptions. I get it. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then, with the charcuterie platter, I just sort of feel like, generally speaking, that just pairs well with most all wines. Hence the wine and cheese pairing of forever, right? So don't overthink that. Charcuterie's become so popular. I say just grab a bottle of wine from your cellar, open it up, and enjoy.
Exactly. So for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure to taste Tolenas wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Sort of a new generation take on Suisun Valley. So if you're not familiar with Suisun Valley, that's okay, but just kind of think of that next gen, maybe a little brighter punch in the white wines, tons of aromatics, very experiential wine, meaning like it's gonna tell a story, it's gonna be memorable, or at least I hope it is. And then the reds, our red blend is specifically made so that it doesn't taste like one specific variety. I don't think that even most wine critics probably couldn't tell me everything that's in it right away. I mean, maybe they could tell the base, right? But I think the purpose for that is that we didn't want to be compared to any other wine varietal. Like when you drink it, oh, should this taste like a cab? Oh, should this taste like a petit? I wanted this to be a red wine that
can just enjoy
and not overthink. Also, my background in engineering, Cliff's background in high education, and we're kind of cerebral dorks too. So we like our wines to make you sort of think, but they're not in that crazy, natural, funky either, right? So we're sort of in between very traditional and new age. So like just this nice little sweet spot, I hope.
So we're sitting here on your family property, and if space aliens were to land right now, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with?
Definitely the Eclipse White Pinot Noir. I mean, the name is sort of out of this world, right? It's very alien-esque.
And a white Pinot Noir is not a very typical style of wine to find.
Yes, that's right. So it is very unique. I mean, there's some making it up in Willamette Valley, and I think there's maybe one or two others in Napa, very small production. Of course, a lot of people say, I've never tried a white Pinot, ever. I've never tried a white Pinot Noir. And I said, well, maybe you have at a wedding when you've cheersed the bride and groom, but it was sparkling and not still.
That's very true. Very, very true. So every vintage tells a different story. We're here in the Suisun Valley. You're on the backside of Napa, a warmer region, but I'm looking out the window and the wind is blowing like crazy. But the sun is shining, so it's an interesting combination. I'm curious what you've seen in the years of growing up here and now that you're spending time in the vineyard on a daily basis because you make the wine. Do you see a lot of variation from year to year? Do you see big differences, or do you see sort of similarities from vintage to vintage? What are you finding when you go out there?
Okay, so first I feel like I got to preface that question and statement with Suisun Valley is almost like Napa Valley shrunk down in its 1/10 of its size, right? So where we're sitting right here, I call this the lower part of the valley. We're the closest to that San Pablo region of the fog and the wind. And it is windy today. It's not always this windy, but we do get more of a breeze here on this property. We're the closest to I-80. We're the furthest from Napa. Speaking of Suisun Valley, right? We're still only 15 minutes away. And so this region here is steadily 7 to 10 degrees cooler than just 10 minutes north, where our home property is, where we grow the Petit Syrah and the Zinfandel. We call that the upper valley. So I live in the upper part of the valley. And when I went outside this morning to take my dog out and water some plants, it was warm. I was in a t-shirt. It was sunny, not a breath of wind. 10 minutes away. Okay, so Suisun Valley has this huge differentiation in a very short mileage.
But now I understand how you grow Pinot in the Suisun Valley.
Yes. So this is one of the only areas, this property here and maybe 5 other parcels that I would say solidly can grow a Pinot Noir made for red wine. You can maybe grow some others for champagne and things, but this little spot here can grow Pinot beautifully. Now, like I said, 10 minutes north, I would not recommend. It's pretty warm. So we've got those warmer climates, varieties like I mentioned before. So year-to-year variation within those pockets. I am not seeing, huge changes over the last 10 years as far as weather. Maybe a slight increase in temperature, or more say less of the cold, right? So our winters, we still grow stone fruit, and we're noticing that the chill hours that are required for the stone fruit is getting a little more challenging to get, right? And then also, when I grew up here on this property, there was a lot more flooding, a lot more rain here. We could, we just dealt with that. That was just a seasonal thing. We're not quite seeing that either. But what I am seeing that's not necessarily related to weather consistency is a overall consistency of quality in the growers here. The growers are really stepping it up. They're getting paid a little bit more for their grapes than they were in the past. This is not an afterthought valley anymore. This is a valley that's on the forefront, getting recognized. And now that's been a big change over the past 10 years.
So you and your husband have established your own winery. Have you also established any traditions for harvest to kick it off?
Oh, gosh, I guess without thinking about it, we have. So Cliff grew up in Michigan. And, wasn't wine country when he was there. There's wines there now. And his mom was a big fan of, Lucille Ball and that whole quintessential grape stomping, right? So she moved out here to help us with our 3 children. And it was on her bucket list to stomp grapes, right? And I thought, oh gosh, how are we going to make this happen? We don't really do this anymore. I mean, we do some foot treading here and there. I mean, we're a small winery, but to like the actual stomping, right? So we said, screw it. We're going to just make it happen for her. So we've done that. We did that right when she moved 3 years ago. We do some foot treading for our rosé and then put it into the press. And now we just do it every year. And it's just family. It's our moms and dads, our cousins, our kids. And we just turn on the music and we just stomp some grapes. And it has been a fun tradition.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. So when you're out in the vineyards and you're walking through them, what's your relationship with the vines? Do you find yourself talking to them, or are you listening, or are they talking to you? I mean, what happens? And then also in the cellar, do you talk to your wine when it's in barrel? Are you coaxing it along through the process?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so when you ask this question, I immediately get transported to my childhood. We would come home from vacations and my dad wouldn't go in the house. He wouldn't help us unload. I mean, my dad's a great dad. That makes him sound bad. But he would beeline for the vineyard and the orchard, and we would tease my mom. Oh, he's out there with his mistresses, right? So I have learned from my dad to very much, be listening to your vineyard, walking your vineyard. He always says the best fertilizer for a orchard or vineyard is a farmer's footsteps. So we're always out there looking and checking. One of my most favorite times of year is when we're deciding when we're going to pick, and we're out there and we're tasting the grapes, and my kids are with me. And I'll tell you what, you want to know when to pick grapes, you take your kids out there, because if they're too sour, they're going to tell you. And if they're ready, they won't stop eating them.
So are they your testers, your official testers?
Oh, yes. And my middle daughter, so we have 3, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And the 6-year-old is determined that she's actually the winemaker. And she will tell me if she thinks I'm waiting too long to pick the grapes. Yes.
And how does she do?
She actually is very talented, believe it or not. She's when we made our Zinfandel last year, she was out playing in the yard and she was in the vineyard. She comes in, Mom, I think the Zinfandel's ready. It was August 28th. I said, oh, honey, no, Zinfandel, we've got time. We've got so much time. There's no way. And she goes, okay, fine. Don't believe me. And so she comes back with a bunch of grapes and she says, taste them. And I looked at her and I said, oh, shoot. What is going on? You are totally right. We need to get on this. So, yes, she knows what she's doing. I have to be careful.
I love that. So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So when I was very young, I wanted to be an astronaut. I loved science and math. I was a total nerd. I thought that being an astronaut, I could escape from all the perils of growing up on a small farm.
And then you ended up back on one.
Yes, I did.
And when you're not working, how do you spend your free time?
Well, busy mom, of course, but we love camping, we love hiking, we love going up to Lake Tahoe. Food's a big part of our life, so, spending time with our family, eating, yes.
And if you were planning a romantic evening for you and your husband when you put the kids to bed or send them off to grandparents' house, what sort of wines do you guys open that's set for a romantic setting?
So when it is a special night for us, we do try to explore other regions, right? Like we don't want to get a cellar palette or just a regional palette. So we really do enjoy our time going to Paso. I went to school in San Luis Obispo, so it's kind of my home away from home. It was a natural gravitation. So we, some of our favorite makers there are like Booker Winery and L'Aventure, like I mentioned. So maybe we would probably start, him and I both love Sauvignon Blanc. So we'd probably start with the Sauvignon Blanc or maybe a Sancerre or something like that, and then move on to a bigger red wine. And then we do enjoy a little bit of port too.
Ooh.
Yes.
It's a 3-course meal right there. So you said a piece of advice your dad had said about walking through the vineyards and the footsteps, which I think was really beautiful. Is there another piece of advice that you've carried with you, something that you use in your work or in how you live your life? And was there another word of wisdom your dad or someone else shared with you along the way?
Oh, so my dad gets a lot of credit because I naturally talk about him being the farmer and the example of the winemaker. But honestly, I'm going to have to go with my mom on this one. She is the visionary and the dreamer in our family. And she is the one that's always pushed us to just do our best. And she just says, doers do more. And I didn't understand what she meant by that, but it's her way of saying, don't be scared of having a full plate, and things will come to you as they need to come to you, and decisions will become clear as you give them time. So she's kind of that person in the back of my mind that says it's okay to just go after your dreams and to, you know, stay busy and keep doing.
Doers do.
Doers do.
And if you could give our listeners a piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Take the time to enjoy life with simple things, right? I think the beauty of wine, it's a very simple action. You get to open a bottle of wine and be transported to that place and time, but mostly find a person that you can talk with while you're drinking wine and enjoy what that is like. Not a lot of people realize how much depth that can bring to your life when you can converse about wine with other people, and how much that opens up emotion and connection to somebody. It's not just a vessel to get tipsy, but it can be very, very cerebral. And I think that it's very enriching in a time that we're going through in this country, in this world. It's a very simple action to bring joy to your life.
So when you look back at your career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements so far?
Oh, well, I just had the honor of being named one of the top 40 under 40 for North Bay Business Journal. And I probably still get emotional talking about it, but I was definitely shocked that I was nominated. And then when I filled out the application, I told myself, there's no way. Like, how could I be named one of these people, and who I was compared to, and the fact that I was able to be part of that it's very humbling, and I'm grateful.
Oh, so complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like
a car without wheels.
Very good. And another thought-provoking one here. We're sitting around a table enjoying your wines. Who from any walk of life, living or deceased, would you want to be sitting at the table having a bottle of Tolenas wine with you?
Gosh, you know, I miss my grandparents very much, so any one of them would be wonderful. I would love for them to see what we've done. They helped my parents tremendously becoming farmers. You know, first generation, you need all the help you can. And my parents have been an example of that to Cliff and I too. So I would just love for them to see our success.
Oh, beautiful. We'll make room at the table for all of them.
Yes, please.
And another question for you. If you were being sent to a deserted island or to outer space, and you had to take 3 wines with you, which 3 wines would you take?
Oh, shoot. Okay. A sparkling of some kind, because I'm sort of utilitarian, and it seems like maybe when you open that sparkling, you could achieve like knocking down a coconut too. And then I'm gonna need a solid red, because clearly that's gonna be a long journey. And then I'm gonna have to go with something really high alcohol, or maybe a port of some kind, because maybe it would be an antiseptic. I don't know.
Sounds like your romantic evening in one.
Yes, right? I don't know. It's just my go-to. It makes sense.
Well, now that you've shared some of your wines and some of your own Tolenas wines with us, we're going to play a little game where we pair wine with music, in the sense that, you know, wine conjures up feelings. You were talking about how it's something that we should enjoy with people and just enjoy the simple things in life, but it makes you feel something. You said earlier that every wine tells a story, every grape tells a story.
Yes.
Well, music also conjures up a lot of those same emotions in us. So I'm going to name a few of the wines you've talked about, a few of your wines, and I want you to tell me what genre of music, a particular musician or song, but it can also be a style that wine conjures up, and maybe there's a word or two you can describe the wine to lead us into understanding that. So you talked about your very interesting and unique white Pinot Noir. So let's start with that.
Oh man, so you're exposing my weakness, pop culture. Like oh man. Okay, so white Pinot, I feel like it has to be a little bit, a mix of like indie and disco. Is that the craziest combo? But I feel like it has to be a mix of indie disco. I don't have a is there anyone that does that? I don't have a specific person, but indie disco, that's what I go for.
Okay. And then you said that you are doing, let's see, your dad's Petite Syrah.
Okay, well, my dad is a huge fan of 70s rock. I mean, like, it's blasting. You would not, as a quiet, reserved farmer that has this, very stoic presence in front of everyone else in his home, he is blaring rock and roll music. And so I just can't think of any other music besides that when I think of his wine. It has to be that.
And Petite Syrah kind of deserves like that.
Bold, loud. Yes, totally.
And what about your red blend where you said nobody could really identify what the grapes are?
Okay, so when I think red blend, I gotta be honest, I think country music because and not like this, like not a sad country music song, but just like a country music ballad. Like maybe even, I Got Friends in Low Place. I don't know, because it's just classic. It's like just this song that maybe a lot of different people could relate to, but it also is like something you'd have going on at a cookout, at a barbecue, at a, and we're still rustic wine country out here in Suisun, and I just feel like the red blend is very much that.
Oh, I love it. Good job.
Thanks.
I won't push you on anymore.
I appreciate that.
Well, to round this out, we're almost finished. I'm curious. I know that you really love drinking your neighbors and you're a very supportive community and everything like that. But what is one wine region in the world? It can be local or international that is on the top of your list to visit.
Oh, this one is easy, and I'm not going to be able to maybe specify the region perfectly. You probably can help me here. But my grandma was born in the region right near Lake Como, Italy. Okay. And I have never been, and I am dying to go. So
the Veneto region.
Yes, thank you for helping me with that. And I am dying to go. I want to see, our family still has a small, house there, and I want to see where she was born and see the places she always talked about and told me as a little girl.
And there's a little wine grown up there.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, Lisa, you've been fantastic, and I'm excited to delve into Tolenas wines and learn more. If other people want to delve into Tolenas, like me, and I know you said that they can buy the wine online, if you can share your website, but also can they visit you and can they come taste the wine, and how can they do that?
Oh, yes. So our website, tolenaswinery.com, you can order all of the wines on there pretty easily. We ship to every state that lets us legally ship to them. And then we are open most weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, 12 to 4. We highly recommend a reservation. We do book up pretty fast, and we're very small. It's just my husband and I and my sister. We're expanding staff, but we are truly a family winery. So we would love to have them out anytime.
So if you're taking a trip up to Napa, it's a 10-15 minute drive outside of Napa, or on your way to Napa, you'll probably pass through Suisun Valley. Stop here and visit Tolenas Winery.
Yes, please. We'd love to have you.
Thanks for joining us on Wine Soundtrack, Lisa. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Allison. I truly did.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.